Hi, welcome to session 5 of Practical OSPF for Network Engineers. I'm Jason Bomar with Net.Academy, and I'll be taking you through today's session. If you enjoyed the content here, please consider giving us a like. And if you'd like to be notified when we post new content, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click the notification icon. Every time we upload new content, you will be notified. Let's go ahead and hop in. Our agenda today is finishing up our talk on OSPF LSAs. We did 1, 2s, and 3s last talk. Now we're going to do 5s, 4s, and 7s. We're also going to revisit area types. So here is our drawing. You can see I've got basically 3 areas, Area 0 and Area 6 and Area 12. And to recall, Type 5 LSAs are generated as external LSAs, okay? That means they're external to the autonomous system. In this case, I'm going to redistribute them on R6. That makes R6 a ASBR. And what happens? Well, as I redistribute them, they'll come in on a 1-to-1. For each prefix I redistribute, I'll generate one Type 5 LSA. And they will propagate throughout the entire OSPF network, assuming we haven't done anything to block them. They'll propagate throughout. However, except for Area 12, no one will be able to reach those Type 5s because remember, we build our SPF trees per area, right? So Area 0 doesn't know directly about R6. Area 6 doesn't know directly about R6. So they'll say, who's R6 again? That brings us to Type 4 LSAs. We generate one of these per ASBR on the ABR. So the Type 5s are generated on the ASBR, one per prefix. The Type 4s are generated on the ABR, one per ASBR. In this case, we just have a single ASBR. We just generate one Type 4. One gets generated on R4 into Area 0. One gets generated on R3 into Area 6. Okay. When I tie a 4 and a 5 LSA together, then I can reach all of my, in this case, EIGRP networks, my external networks. So you can kind of see how they're required. I tend to think of the 5s first and then the 4s second, which is why I order them 5, 4, and then 7. With that being said, though, let's go revisit area types. If you'll recall from session 2, I believe, we have 3 special area types: the stubby, the totally stubby, and the NSSA, or not so stubby area. And now we have some extra context for how these areas actually work. So if you recall, a stubby area allows intra and inter area routes. That means it allows Type 1s, Type 2s, and Type 3s. A totally stubby area only allows intra area routes. That means only Type 1s and Type 2s. And then an NSSA is basically a stub area that also has an ASBR, right? Which is why they call it not so stubby. It's a stub area, but I'm bringing in these external routes. And so it's not as stubby as it could have been if it was a true stub area, right? So depending on how the NSSA is configured, it could either be 1s and 2s, or it could be 1s, 2s, and 3s. Now, there's something to note that none of these will allow Type 4 or Type 5. That's what we've just talked about, right? So none of these allow for external routes. So how do I get to my external routes? We need external routes. We need things like default route at a minimum, right? Well, we do those in the stub and totally stub by instead injecting in a default Type 3 LSA. And then on the NSSA, that's kind of a weird one, right? So if I am a stub area or total stub area and I redistribute right, and I redistribute, I'm going to generate type 5s, but by definition, type 5s are not allowed in. How do I get around that? You get around that with something called a type 7. This is a Cisco proprietary. And basically it generates on the ASBR, same as a type 5, 1 per prefix. When it gets to the ABR, R4 says, well, wait a second. I know what a type 7 is. A type 7 is just a 5. And by the way, if I generate a 5, I need to generate a 4. So it will generate 1 5 for each 7 that is introduced, and then a 4 per ASBR, and then inject it into the area, right? It's not so much that this is a common thing to have NSSAs like this, but it's an important thing because it shows us how OSPF deals with a challenge like this, right? They do it by saying, well, type 4s and 5s are not allowed. So instead, I'm going to change it to a type 7. I don't have any rules about a type 7. And then the ABR says, oh, okay, I know what you did. A type 7 is really just a 5. So let me take each 7 and convert it into a 5. And by the way, if I generate a 5, I better generate a 4 so I know how to advertise everyone to get the R6. So let's recap real quickly. Our type 5s are generated by the ASBR. There's 1 per prefix that's redistributed. Our type 4s are generated by the ABR, and there's 1 per ASBR in the local area. Remember that since type 1s never leave the area, that's what makes that type 4 necessary. The other areas won't have a direct router LSA for the ASBR, right? Because they're in other areas. Now, type 7s are quite a bit more rare. NSSAs are fairly rare. And so this is less about being practical with the type 7s, more about how does OSPF deal with a problem like this? And you'll start to see some themes appearing, right? When we want to do filtering or policies, or we want to talk about special LSAs, we're always talking about either the ASBR or the ABR, right? Now, all of these LSAs that we've talked about, they get kind of brought together in something called the LSDB, or Link State Database, right? And the Link State Database is what we use to kind of inform how we build the routing table. There are other LSAs besides 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. However, those are even more rare, I think. And so I don't see them as terribly practical. These are the ones you're going to need for your day-to-day administration of OSPF. And I think there's a lot of phenomenal channels and resources out there for certs. If that's where you're going, then, go ahead and take a look at some of those. Here, we're mostly focused on what network engineers do day to day to deal with, in this case, their OSPF network, right? I want to thank you for your time today. Next session, we're actually going to do a practical live demo, and we're going to go through and look a lot at that link state database and the different LSAs and how things do and don't work within. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.
Need help? Call our cybersecurity team and book a consultation with us today.